Hi, welcome to this on Maths prediction for the AQA Foundation Paper 3 Maths GCSE. Enjoy! Hi, I'm Chris Gilpin and welcome to this prediction for the Paper 3 Maths paper. I hope Paper 1 and 2 have gone well for you. And I'm not going to talk too much, but don't forget that these papers are on our website, onmaths.com, which I'm sure the link will come up there now. If you click on the link, it will take you to the prediction on our website. Don't forget that the prediction on our website changes the numbers in the questions, so you can do it as many times as you want, and you're not just getting the same answers each time. This video will go through all of the answers to a set of numbers. So if you don't understand a question, come to this video and you can see how to do it for maybe a different set of numbers, but you can get the methods. If you check out our website, we've got tutorials for everything. We've got topic busters, demon questions, practice papers, all sorts of things. So please check out our website on maths.com. If you enjoy this video, please click like. If you want to see any other stuff from us, especially over the next few days, please click subscribe. Thank you and enjoy the video. When we're asked to write a number in figures, it just means as numbers. So we've got 5,026. We need a 0 there as a placeholder. So you're just going to write 5026, 5,026. Next question says, write down the value of 8. Now, if we remember, and let's just write the number a little bit bigger. This is our units column, this is our tenths column, and this is our hundredths column. So the value of the 8 is 8 hundredths. We can write that as a fraction, 8 hundredths. And that's the answer. Question C, write down 655 correct to the nearest 10. Okay, so 655, if we just do a quick number line, 655, the next 10 up is 660, and the next one down is 650. So those are the two it can round to. This 655 is bang on halfway, and if they are halfway, they round upwards. So the answer is 660. I draw that properly. If it was any less, if it was 654, it would round down. So if the last number, if that number there is 5 or more, it will round up. You will need to be familiar with the names of three-dimensional shapes. So the one we have here is a triangular based prism. So a prism is a shape that you can cut anywhere along one of the axes, so anywhere along here, and it would look exactly the same. It would look like a triangle. The first bit of this, triangular based, is just the name of the shape at the end, the name of the shape at the end of the prism. So you can have a hexagonal based prism or anything like that. It says write down the number of faces. So the faces we can see, well, the face we can see here is a triangle, so that's 1. Then we've got 1 along here, which is a rectangle. So we've got 2 that we can see, but there is also going to be a third one round here, which is also going to be a rectangle, a fourth one at the bottom, which is going to be a rectangle, and then a fifth one round the back, which is going to be a triangle, just like number 1. So in total there are 5 faces. Try and remember what a face is. A face is something you can lay your hand down flat on. An edge is something that you can run your finger along, so that's an edge there. And vertices or vertex is something that if you put your finger on, it would be pointy. So there are going to be 6 vertices. The first thing to look at with a pictogram, which this is the key. Now the key tells us what each picture represents. So if you have a look at the key here, it says each circle represents 8 DVDs. Now that's the complete circle. So it says, what day are the most DVDs sold? Monday, Tuesday or Wednesday? Well, or you can always just look at which has the most shapes. Now Tuesday has 2, Wednesday has 1.5, but Monday has over 2 3/4. So it's definitely going to be Monday because it's got the most circles. Now, how many DVDs were sold on Tuesday? Well, if each circle represents 8, there's 8 there and there's 8 there. So we just need to add the 8s together, which makes 16. So 16 DVDs were sold on Tuesday. It says how many DVDs were sold on Monday? Well, you've got the 8 there and you've got the 8 there. Now we've got a bit of a problem here because it's not a complete 8. So we need to figure out how much each quarter is worth. Well, what do you times by 4 to get 8? Well, 2. Let's check to see if that works. So we've got 2 there, 2 there, 2 there, and an extra 2, which is actually missing on that one, would make 8. So that would work perfectly. So to find out a quarter of it, we just divide it by 4, which gives us 2. So we've got the 8s, because we've got 2 complete circles, and then we've got those 3 2s, so we've got another 6. So we just need to add on 6 to the 16. So 16 plus 6 is going to be 22. So that's going to be 22. Okay, let's have a look at the next question. On Thursday, 20 DVDs were sold. Show this information on a pictogram. So let's have a think how many circles that will be. So if I've put one circle down, that's 8. Well, we've still got enough left over. If I put another full circle down, that's 16. Now 16, let's try another one. Let's put another full circle down, and that gives us 24. So that would be too much. So we're going to have to go into those quarters. So we've got 16. How many more 2s do we need? So 16, that would give us 18, and that would give us 20. So we need 2 whole circles and then 2 quarters. So if I shade in, if I draw, then shade in, 2 whole circles, and then we've got 2 quarters left over, which is just a half. Let's just check that. What's half of 8? That would be 4. And what's 8 plus 8 plus 4? That gives us 20. So we know the answer is correct. So the first thing to look at in this question is how many sides has the spinner got? So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4 equally sized, equally spaced out sides of that spinner. So any one of those colours is going to be a quarter chance. So let's have a look. What letter of the probability line represents a probability the spinner will land on a yellow? So there is 1 yellow on that spinner, and so therefore it's going to be a quarter chance. So if you have a look at how many notches this number line has, well, we don't count the first one, so we've got 1, 2, 3, 4 notches. So each one of those notches is going to be a quarter. So 1 quarter will be at B. Which letter represents probability of landing on a red? So we have 2 reds there. So that's going to be 2 quarters. So we've got 1 quarter and 2 quarters would be at C. Now 2 quarters is the same as a half, which is what the 0.5 there is. It's just a half. What letter on the probability line represents the probability it will land on a blue? Well, there aren't any blues on there. So however many times you spin it, it will never land on a blue. And in probability, we mark that with a 0. So it's going to be A. So we're given function machines for this question. And it says, what is the output when the input's 24? So the input's 24. And the first thing that's going to happen to it is it's going to divide by 2. So we're going to halve it. So that's going to make it 12. Then it says we're going to add 6. So when we add 6 to 12, we get 18. So the output is 18. Next question says below is a different number machine. It says when the input is 20, the output is 56. So let's follow through on the input. So the input's 20, we go take away 6, so that's going to give us 14. Now we've got to then think, right, how do I get from 14 to 56? Now, as it stands, there are multiple ways of doing this. If you do this on onmaths.com, it has a drop-down box and it only lets you select one of the options. So you can add a number to 14 to get to 56, and for this question that would be full marks, that would be absolutely fine. Or you can times it by 4, and times by 4 is the one I'm going to go for. So I'm going to complete the number machine by saying times 4. So in this question we're asked to find the percentage decrease, and whenever we're asked to find the percentage increase or decrease, and this time we're doing a percentage decrease, the formula is just the change over the original times by 100. So to work out the change here, it's going to be the initial amount take away the final amount on this one, because it's going down and we don't want to have a negative, over the original. Now it says it decreases from this amount to this amount, so the original is going to be the 10,488 and then times by 100. So I'm going to do that on the calculator. So fraction button, 10,488 minus 10,254 over 10,488, and then outside the fraction times by 100, and I get the answer 2.2311 blah blah blah. So to 2 decimal places it's going to be 2.23. So the first thing to do with this question is realise that we're looking for possible menu choices, and realise that actually instead of writing sushi and burger we can just write S and B, and that's normally absolutely fine unless the question asks specifically to write down the words. So the way to start this is just look at sushi first and go through the combinations with sushi. So we can have sushi and ice cream, we can have sushi and strawberries, or we can have sushi and peaches. Now that's it for sushi. So I've done sushi, and now I'm going to focus on burger. So we can have burger and ice cream, we can have burger and strawberries, and we can have burger and peaches. And if you do it systematically like that, you know you haven't missed any. Okay, so the first thing to realise with this question is what perimeter means. The perimeter is the distance around a shape. Now we've got a lot of x's and numbers, but it does say it wants an expression for the perimeter. So we're not looking for a number as an answer, we're looking for an expression, so letters and numbers. Okay, so there are a few sides missing, so I'm going to try and find out this side first. And to get this side, we're going to add the 5x here with the x there. So 5x plus x is 6x. So we've got that one. Now, if the total distance across is 7x plus 16, and the bit we know is 6x plus 11, then the bit we don't know we'll have to add up together to make the 7x plus 16. So we need another x and we need another 5. Okay, we've labelled all the sides. So what I'm going to do is pick a point on the shape, and I'm just going to start walking around the shape and writing down everything as I go. So perimeter equals, and we've got 6x plus 11 plus 5x plus x plus 5 plus 6x plus 7x plus 16 plus x. So we've got quite a lengthy string of algebra there. Now we'll always need to simplify this. Okay, so if I collect the x's first, so we've got a 6x plus a 5x plus an x plus 6x plus 7x plus an x, which is going to be 26x. Okay, let's do the numbers next. So we've got 11 plus 5 plus 16, which is going to be 32. Okay, so the perimeter is going to be 26x plus 32. Now, a different way I could have done this is just focused on this one and doubled them. Now, let's have a look and see how that works. If this length here is 6x, then these two here would add together to make 6x. So in total, we have 12x going down. All the ones going across is going to be double this one. So it's all going to add together to make 14x plus 32. And then if you add those together, that would also give us the 26x plus 32.
Instead of going straight to percentages for this question, I would first of all get it as a fraction. So it says there's 15 students who are female and 31 altogether. So the fraction is going to be 15 over 31. And to simply convert between fractions and percentages, all you need to do is times by 100. And percent means per 100, so it's always going to be times by 100, and that'll always get you a percentage. So I'm going to get my calculator out. Now I can write that as a fraction, or I could do 15 divided by 31. It gives you the same answer. So 15 over 31 times by 100. And it gives me a fraction, so I'm going to press S to D. And it's 48.3870, blah, blah, blah. And it says give it to the nearest percent. So that's a 3, so it's not going to move that 8 up to a 9. So it's just 48%.
Okay, so we're asked to do a front elevation of this shape. Now, it's important to realise with front elevations or side elevations or even plans, you don't do any 3D, you literally draw it in 2D. If you try and do any 3D diagonal lines, you'll instantly lose marks, because when you're asked to do an elevation, it means you're directly straight onto that shape, so you won't see any 3D sort of lines coming off it. So when we're standing where the arrow is with the front, all we can see is this bit here. That's the only thing we can see. So it will look like this. Now, I'm not able to draw accurately here, but the width of it will be the same width as at the back here, so it would be 4 centimeters. So I draw it as 4 centimeters. The height of it would be the same height as this, so it would be 6 centimeters. So I draw a rectangle, perfect rectangle, which is 4 centimeters wide and 6 centimeters tall, and nothing else. You won't be able to see anything else. So all of this you wouldn't be able to see, neither would you be able to see any of this. Okay, so we're asked to find the midpoint, which is just kind of the halfway point, and we're given 2 coordinates at the start and end of the line segment. And a really easy way of doing this is you're just finding out the average of the x coordinates and the average of the y coordinates. So to find an average, we're going to do the x coordinates first. You add together the 2 coordinates, the 2 x coordinates, and divide by 2, because there's 2 numbers. So 2 plus minus 1, well, 2 take away 1, because the minus will win against plus and a minus. So 2 take away 1 is 1, and divide by 2 is just going to be 0.5, or just a half. The y's, so here we've got minus 5 plus 2 over 2. Minus 5 plus 2 is minus 3 over 2, which is going to be minus 1.5. So the coordinates are 0.5 minus 1.5. And if you think about it, half is halfway between 2 and minus 1, so that makes sense. And minus 1.5 is halfway between minus 5 and 2.
So we're given quite a basic diagram. We're given a pair of parallel lines and we're given two angles from them. And angles on parallel lines, there are four things you should be thinking about. So the first one is corresponding, those are F angles. The next one is alternate, which are Z angles. The next one has loads of names. It's co-interior, interior, allied, whichever your teacher says. And the last one is vertically opposite. Now, vertically opposite occur in other places as well, not just parallel lines, but that's normally the one that you will be using. So let's have a look. Well, what letter does that make? So if I draw out from the parallel lines, I always say it's the armpits of the letter. So if it's a Z, it's the armpits of the Z. And if it's an F, it's the armpits of the F. Well, this is like an upside down backwards F. So we know that upside down backwards F, any F angles are going to be the same. So I know that's 62 degrees. Now we've got to give a reason. So the reason is corresponding. Now I always got corresponding and alternate mixed up. So I don't know whether this will help you, but I always think cor F ponding and alternate. Please don't spell it that way, but I just literally bung the letter into the word and I've never got them muddled up since. So that might help you. The other one, the C angle, are not equal. So these ones here are not equal. They add up to 180 degrees. So just be careful with that. The rule of thumb is if you're guessing and they look the same, even if it says it's not drawn to scale, if they look the same, then if you have no other memory of what they're likely to be, if you forget about angles on parallel lines, just write down the same angle. If the one's acute and one's obtuse, just take it away from 180 degrees and maybe you'll get some marks. But hopefully you'll remember the corresponding alternate, co-interior or interior or allied, and vertically opposite. Okay, so we're asked to write 88 as a product of its prime factors. So the first thing to do is write 88, and then we have two shoots coming from it. Now I need to find out which two numbers times together to make 88. Now a little tip, if you've got an even number, always pick 2. So 2 times 44. Now whenever we get to a prime number, we always circle it, because that's finished. So 44, you can get another 2 out of that, we'll divide another 2 out of that, so 2 and 22, 2 and 11. Now 11 is also a prime number, and when you're left with just prime numbers, then you write your answer out like this. Now if you're also asked to write it in index form, that means instead of 2 times 2 times 2, you're going to write 2 to the power of 3 times 11. Now don't work that out because that will give you 88. So 2 cubed times 11 is 88. Okay, there's more than one way to expand and simplify a single bracket. You're essentially doing the same thing, but some of you might want to draw grids or do it in a different way. I always just use smiles and rainbows, so I just create a smile between the 2 and the 3x, and a rainbow between the 2 and the 6, and I put a little time sign there to remind me to times it. Just put a notch through the bracket. That means we're going to times 2 and 3x, and 2 times 3 is 6, and then we've got the x there, and 2 times 6 we're going to times together to make 12. Now we've still got the 4x, so I still need to write that down. Then I'm going to collect like terms. Now the like terms we have is the 6x and the plus 4x. So 6x plus 4x is 10x, and then there's nothing that we can do with the 12, so we just leave that. So it's 10x plus 12. Okay, the next one, there's a double smiles and rainbows. We've got one here, put a little time sign there, and we've got one here. So we'll do the first one first. So 8 times 6x, so we do 8 times 6, which is 48, and then we've got the x. Then we do 8 times positive 2, which is 16, so plus 16. Now that's nice and easy. However, the next one's slightly different. The number outside the brackets is not a 3, it's a minus 3. So when we do minus 3 times positive 4x, we're going to get a negative because a minus times a positive is a negative. Then we do 3 times 4, which is 12, and then we've got the x as well. Now the rainbow is minus 3 times minus 5. Two minuses times together is a plus. 3 times 5 is 15. Then we look for like terms, so we've got the 48x and the minus 12x, and we've got the plus 16 and the plus 15. So we want to do 48 take away 12, or 48x take away 12x. So if we take away 2, it's 6. If we take away 10, it's 36x. Then we want to do 16 plus 15. Well, 15 plus 15 is 30, so that's going to be 31. So the answer is going to be 36x plus 31. Now the most common mistakes are for that n bit there, this bit here. Sometimes students will write down negative 15. Okay, so there are quite a few different ways of doing this question. One way I'm going to show you now, the fact that £1 equals, not very good at drawing euros, 2.23 euros, and we need to get it equal to 2,676. And so we've got to work out how do you get from here to here. Now the way of doing that is 2676 divided by 2.23, and all on the calculator. So we know we've got to times that by 1,200, which is what the calculator told me when I did 2676 divided by 2.23. Now I can check that by typing in 2.23 times 1200, and it gives me 2,676. So if that works that side, it has to be able to work this side as well. So I'm going to times this side by 1,200, which is quite obvious. 1 times 1,200 is going to be 1,200, and that's going to be my answer, 1,200. Now there's different ways of doing it, different ways of thinking about it. What you can think about is to get from pounds to euros, we times by 2.23. So therefore, to go the other way, we're going to divide by 2.23. And so you just do 2,676 divided by 2.23. There's loads of different other ways of doing it. You can do it with ratios as well. Okay, so we're asked to find the single transformation that goes from A to B. Okay, so first things first, I asked myself a number of questions here. Question number 1, has it been mirrored? No, not really. So it's not a reflection. Has it just moved? Well, it has moved, but it hasn't just moved. It's not the same shape, so it's not a translation. Has it been flipped over? Well, no, it's the same way up, so it's not a rotation. The last question is, has it changed size? Well, yes, it has. So it's an enlargement. Now, with enlargement, and I can put that into my answer first of all, so it is an enlargement. With enlargement, I need to work out what the scale factor is. So if I have a look at the bottom, that's 1 square across on A, and it becomes 2 squares across on B. So what do I times 1 by to get to 2? Or I could do 2 divided by 1. So the 1 on the second shape divided by the 1 on the first shape. 2 divided by 1 is 2. So we know that the scale factor is 2. Now, last thing we need to do is the centre of enlargement. And to do that, you get a ruler and you join up all of the points but carry them on. So I'm joining up the bottom left ones, I'm joining up the bottom right ones, and I'm joining up the top left ones. So I'm just joining all of these up, and you notice that they all cross over at this point here, and that's called our centre of enlargement. So let's just check where that is. Okay, so the centre of enlargement is 3 minus 4. And you need all three of those things. Sometimes it's only 2 marks, and you don't always get a mark for saying enlargement. However, you can't get full marks unless you say enlargement. So make sure you have the word enlargement and the scale factor to guarantee that you get that first mark. And then the second mark or the third mark will be for the centre of enlargement. Okay, so this question gives us some instructions underneath and a Venn diagram to fill out. So it says there's 31 people altogether. So the four numbers we're trying to find, which is signified with the A, B, C and D, have to add together to make 31. 22 have a cat. Now at the moment we can't fill anything in because the cat is split between A and B. 16 people have a dog. Again, we can't fill out anything yet because the dog is split between B and C. But this piece of information here will help us start. So it says 12 had a cat but not a dog. So this is going to be 12 here. The next one we can now fill out is this one. 22 had a cat. Well, if 12 didn't have a dog, that means that 10 must have had a dog as well to make that add up to 22. Now we can then fill out this one, which says 16 had a dog. Well, if 10 of them also had a cat, that leaves 6 people who've just had a dog. Now, if we add those up all together, then that's going to give us, was it 28? And it says that there's 31 people in total. So if we've used up 28 of the people within the two circles, the cat and the dog circles, that means we've got 3 people left over outside. So you'll need a calculator for this question. The different calculators do things slightly different, but by far the most common calculator, and if you haven't got one, I would recommend them, are the Casio calculators. Mine has a shiny solar panel on the top, but you don't need that. The average battery life lasts way longer than you'll ever need the calculator. So the first button I would press, and there's different ways of doing this question, is the button to get the fraction, which on the Casios looks like this. And that will make a fraction appear on your calculator. Now, some of the older ones, the fraction looks a bit weird. It involves like a symbol like this. And actually on the new ones it can, but you need to change the settings if it does that. It should open up, it should look something like this, like a box and then another box, and there should be a cursor blinking in this box. Okay, so we want to fill in this top box first, since it's already flashing. So 76.8 plus 81.9. Okay, and so to shift downwards on the Casio calculators, there's a sort of cursor, like a cursor stick, a direction button thing. It's the big blue button beneath the screen on most of the calculators, and you just push the down to go to the denominator of the fraction. And then we need to fill in this bit here, so 0.19. And then to get the squared button, it's on like that. So you just press that, and it looks exactly as it does in the question on the screen, so you know you've got it right. So you press the equals, and my one comes up with 4396.121884. Now, it might be tempting to try and round that, but it says it wants all the figures, so just put them all in. Now, if your calculator is set to a mode which is going to show even more numbers, then normally six digits after the decimal point is more than enough. They won't require you to go to 100 or 200 decimal places. On this question, that's actually an exact amount. Okay, so write down correct to 2 significant figures. Now, to do 2 significant figures, we start counting at the start of the number. So I'm going to do a red line where you need to start counting. And you just count 1, 2 numbers. So the blue line is where I've stopped counting. Now, all of these numbers here are going to be reset to 0. They're going to go away. Well, not quite. Let's come to that later. Now, this number here, the 9, is what we call a decider number. Now, that number is going to go. That 9 is gone. Okay? But before it goes, we need to see whether that is 5 or more or 4 or less. If it's 5 or more, it pushes that 3 up to a 4. So the answer will be 4, 4, and then you'd think, oh, okay, that's it, rounded, and you'd write that in the answer column. But when I said they disappear, they don't quite disappear. All the numbers above the green line that I've just drawn reset to 0. They turn to 0. Now, if you think about it, if I don't know what would have a decimal place, but if you have a number 4,396.121884 written down, and someone says, "Can you tell me roughly how much that is?" Then if you say the answer of 44, that's not roughly 44. It's nowhere near 44. So the 9 and the 6 will turn to 0. And actually the other numbers do too. But these numbers here are not changing the number at all. These two zeros here will make that 4,400 instead of just 44. The other numbers after decimal point, we might as well get rid of them. So the answer is 4,400, okay, because we don't need to show these numbers. Now, the reason students make this mistake is they're so used to decimal places. Now, decimal places, you always remove them because they're always after the decimal point. But with significant figures, they need to turn to zeros. Okay, the way you solve these is exactly the same as where you solve an equation. It's just you've got an inequality sign here. So we're going to put our lines in, probably way too long. And we're going to try and get x on its own. So the first thing we're going to do is take away 10 from both sides. So we've got 7x, and then this time, don't forget, don't put an equal sign. You must do this inequality sign. And 77, and then we're going to divide 7 both sides. So we've got x is greater than or equal to 11. Now it's really, really tempting. And there we go, I've already made a mistake. It's really, really tempting to put an equal sign in there, but there have been in some exams in the past that you get 0 marks, even if it's a 3-mark question, for putting an equal sign. So remember to put the same sign. Okay, factorize means put it into brackets. So looking at the first one, there's a t I can divide out of both of them, so I put t on the outside of the bracket, but there's no number because 7 and 5 don't have anything that goes into both of them. So I think, what do I times t by to get to 7t squared? Well, it's going to be 7t. And what do I times t by to get to 5t? Well, it's just going to be 5. You can check your answer by expanding the bracket, check it makes 7t squared plus 5t, which it does. Next one, w is only in the first term, so I can't divide out the w, but there's a number I can divide out of both of those. Now, I could pick 2, but actually 4 is a better number because it says factorize fully, which means I need to take out or divide out the 4 rather than just the 2. So 4 on the outside. What do I times 4 by to get to 12w? Well, 3w. And what do I times 4 by to get to minus 8? It's going to be minus 2. And again, I can expand that to check it. Right, the last one, there's a number and a letter. So I'm thinking the number of 16 and 24 would be 8, and the letter would be A. Okay, so there's 2 things that we're dividing out this time. So I'm going to have 8a on the outside. So I figure out, what do I times 8 by to get to 24? Well, that's 3. And what do I times a by to get to a squared? Well, that's going to be a. What do I times 8 by to get to 16? 2. And what do I times 2 by to get to 16a? So it's just going to leave it because the a is on the outside of the bracket. So a to a times 2 is 16a, so I don't need an a there. So to work out the volume of a prism, we work out the area of the cross section and we times it by how 3D the shape is, which we call the length. So we're going to work out first of all the cross section area. Now the cross section is a triangle. So the formula for a triangle for area is half times base times height. So the base of it is 22 and the height of it is 14. So on my calculator I'm going to do 0.5 times 22 times 14, which is 154. And be careful, the most common mistake here is not to halve it. So with the triangle we have to halve it. And so the volume is the area of that triangle
times how 3D it is, so 15. As I said, that's called the length. So times that by 15, and we get 2,310. So my answer is 2,310 centimeters cubed. Now, a lot of people look at the word estimate and think, oh, let's just take a guess at it. The reason we're estimating is because of the first step that we have to do to answer this question. It doesn't mean that just have a quick punt and guess at it. With this question, you won't be able to guess it correctly, or it'd be very, very unlikely. So we approach this the same as if it wasn't a group. However, we do have a group, so we've got to do a step first. This means that we've got a value somewhere between 0 and 4, including 4 but not including 0. Now the problem is that the first step in this method is to multiply these two numbers together, but you can't times somewhere between 0 and 4 by 14. So what we need to do first is find the midpoint. The reason we pick the midpoint is it's a good number to use to represent that group. If we assumed all those numbers were 0, then it would probably be ridiculously small. If we assume they were all 4, again it would be too high. So we assume that all those are 2 because it's right in the middle of the group, and chances are that most of them are closer to 2 than 0 or 4. So we find the midpoint of each of the groups, and the way of doing this is just adding the lowest and highest value together and dividing it by 2. Or just having a look. 4 to 8 will be 6, 8 to 12 halfway would be 10, 12 to 16 halfway would be 14, and 16 to 20 halfway would be 18. Then what we do is we get the frequencies and times them by the midpoints. So it's the same as if it wasn't a group now. So we do 14 times 2, which is 28, 6 times 6 is 36, 3 times 10 is 30, and then you can use a calculator for this, so 9 times 14, have an idea of what it's going to be. Hopefully it's 126, which it is, good, and 2 times 18, which is 36. And this is I call this the fx, although in this case we are calling the first one s, so it's the fs column. And then we need to find the sum of the fs column. So we're going to add up 28, 36, 30, 126 and 36 on the calculator, which is 256. And then we're going to sum up the frequencies, which is this column here. So 14 plus 6 plus 3 plus 9 plus 2, which is 34. And then what we're going to do is we're going to get the 256, which is all our values added together, and divide it by 34. So 256 divided by 34. And I get the answer of 7.5294 blah blah blah. And to 2 decimal places, that's going to be 7.53. Now, the reason it's an estimate, as I've said before, is that we don't know that all the values in the first group are 2. We are estimating them to all be 2, even though we know that some of them will be 1, some of them will be 3. But chances are it will balance out that it's roughly going to be about 2 in that group, and 6 in the next group, and 10 in the group after. That's where the word estimate comes. The method for doing this is how I've shown it here. I don't believe there's any other methods you can use for this. Okay, the way of doing this question is to do a quick number line. Now we're going to put 130 in the middle. Now it's the nearest 10, so I'm thinking what would the next one down be? Well, if we had slightly less, if we had 128, it would still round to 130. So the next one down that it could have rounded to is 120, and the next one up it could have rounded to is 140. Now to find the intervals, we're going to work out the halfway between the two. So I'm going to work out this one here and this one here. So halfway between 120 and 130 is 125, and halfway between 130 and 140 is 135. Now, it says it wants h for the height, so we're going to put h in the middle. I'm going to put 125 to the left of it, and 135 to the right of it. Now, h could have been, h was greater than, but it could have been 125 as well. So we have a little arrow underneath a little equals underneath the inequality. H was less than 135, but it couldn't be 135, otherwise it would round up to 140, so we don't put the equal sign there. Now this middle bit here, that will always be the same when you're answering this question, when you're asked for the error interval. The letter here might change. It might be fussy and ask you for a letter, or it might not. It might just say, just use any letter. If it says use any letter, X or N or whatever you want to use is acceptable. But the signs here will always look like this for an error interval.
Okay, so we've got a pair of simultaneous equations here, and we've got a problem because the coefficients of the x and the coefficients of the y are different, so we need either the x is the same or the y is the same. Now, looking at this, I could times the bottom by 3 and the top by 8 to get the y's the same, but it looks much easier to get the x's the same. So if I times the top by 3 and times everything at the bottom by 2, then it will get the x's the same. So I'm going to times the top by 3 first, so we get 6x minus 9y equals 36. I'm going to times the bottom one by 2, so we get the 6x, so we have these the same, plus 16y equals minus 14. And be careful to times everything in the equation by 2 and everything in the equation by 3. So with simultaneous equations we work downwards. And the rule of what we're doing is if we have the same signs, we subtract. And if we have different signs, we add. So looking at the 6x's, we have the same signs, they're both positive, so we are going to subtract. Okay, so 6x take away 6x is nothing, which is good because we want to get rid of that. Minus 9y take away 16y. So minus 9y, and we're going to take away 16y. So we're going to end up with minus 25y. And we've got 36 take away minus 14. Now that's going to be the same as a plus. When you have two minuses next to each other, it will be a plus. So that's going to be 50. So I'm going to put my lines down the side, and we're going to divide both sides by minus 25. And you end up with y equals, so that's going to be a minus, and it's going to be minus 2. Now if you're not comfortable with doing that, you can switch the signs first. So if you end up with this problem, what you can do is you can just effectively times both sides by minus 1 first. So you've got 25y equals minus 50, and then just divide by 25. So y equals minus 2. Okay, now we need to put that into the equation. So I'm going to pick the top one. It doesn't matter which one you pick. So we've got 2x minus, and then we've got 3 times minus 2 equals 12. So let's put our lines in. So we've got 2x, and that's going to be minus 6, and then the minus will make it a plus 6 equals 12. We're going to take away 6 both sides. 2x equals 6, and we're going to divide both sides by 2. We end up with x equals 3. Now we can put that into the second equation to check that it works. So we've got 9 and then minus 16. 9 take away 16 is minus 7.
Now I'm going to be using the multiplier method for this question, but you might have a different method, and if it's working, stick with it. Okay, so to use the multiplier method, we need to work out what we're doing. So we're increasing by 1.6% because it's a savings account, and if your money goes down in a savings account, you wouldn't be happy with it. So to use the multiplier method, you start off with 100%. You do what the percentage, or you add or take away the percentage depending on the question. Here we're adding because it's going up by 1.6%, and we're going to end up with 101.6%. Then you work that out as a multiplier. Now to do that, all you do is you divide by 100, and all you're doing is converting it to a decimal. Multiplier is just a posh way of saying decimal. Okay, this is now our multiplier. Now whenever I times something by this number, the 1.016, it will increase it by 1.6%. So we've got £2,400, and if I just had 1 year, I would times it by the multiplier and it would work out what it is after the second year. But we've got 7 years, so what we could do is times it by 1.016 7 times, but I can't be bothered to do that because we know something better in maths. What we can do instead is do that multiplier to the power of 7, and that's just the same way as just timesing it by 1.016 7 times, and it's a bit easier to do. So 2,400 on the calculator times 1.016, and then I put my power button and I type in 7, and I get the answer 2,682.0520 blah blah blah. Okay, so because it's a money question, it can only have 2 decimal places, so 2682.05. Now the last step is really just to check that that makes sense. Well, we're in a savings account for 7 years, we've put in £2,400 and we've got out after 7 years 2,682 roughly, so 2,600. So we've made £200. Now the interest rate, the 1.6%, is quite a low interest rate, so we wouldn't expect very much money. So about £200 is about right. So you can always just check your answer to see if it makes sense. If you ended up with less money at the end, then alarm bells are ringing.
Okay, so this question's a right angle triangle. We're asked to find a length, given a length and an angle, and that means we're going to be using trigonometry. So the first step of trigonometry is go across from the across from the right angle, and that's the hypotenuse. Go across from the marked angle, the one given to us in the question, and that's the opposite. And the one left over is the adjacent, and it's next to the right angle and the marked angle. The next step is to cross out the one that's not very interesting. Well, the adjacent has 7.1 next to it, the hypotenuse has the x next to it, the opposite has nothing next to it, so let's cross that out. Then we're going to write down SOHCAHTOA, and it's always the same. Whenever you use trigonometry, always write down the same thing. And this is a collection of 3 triangles that basically tell you how to do this question. Now, next step is we could cross out the 2 that we don't need. Now we crossed out the opposite on our diagram, so we'll cross out the 2 that have the opposite in, and it leaves us with Ka. Now at this point, if you want to solve it using the formula, then you substitute in and solve like that. I'm going to use a slightly different method. I'm just going to bung it all in a triangle and let the triangle do the work. The C stands for cos the angle, so it's cos 37. It's always cos the angle. The A at the top is 7.1 on our diagram, and the H at the bottom is x. And the way you're using this triangle is whenever you're finding the bottom right one, you do the top one over the bottom left one. So that's going to be x equals 7.1 over cos 37. Now, when you type this into your calculator, you press the fraction button, then 7.1. Use the cursor key to go downwards. Type in cos 37, but make sure you close the bracket. The calculator will say it's an error unless you close the bracket. And when I do that, I get 8.89016 blah blah blah. To 2 decimal places, that's going to be 8.89. Last step is just to check it makes sense. The hypotenuse has to be the longest side. Well, 8.89 is longer than 7.1, so it's probably correct. Okay, so whenever you're finding a stratified sample, you always have the number in the sample and you times it by the fraction of that particular group that you're interested in. So our sample is 15, and we're going to times that by, well, it says the male who went to the log flume. So male who went to the log flume is here, and I think it says in the question there's 131. So it's going to be 31 of the people
out of 131. So with the calculator, I'm going to do 15 times fraction button 31 over 131. Now that gives me 3.549 blah blah blah. And the important thing to realise is you can't have half a person, so you will need to round that. And I'm going to round that to 4.
Okay, so tree diagram question. And this one says that in bag 1, there are 3 blue counters and 4 red counters. And in bag 2, there are 4 blue counters and 3 red counters. So with tree diagrams, we always start here. And we ask ourselves, well, in bag 1, we can either pick a blue or a red. Well, let's start with blue. What's the probability I pick a blue? Well, there's 3 blues, and there are 3 blues and 4 reds, so 7 in total. So we move on. We've picked a blue from bag 1, so we're currently here, and we look at bag 2. Well, in bag 2, there are 4 blue counters and 7 in total. Let's go back a little bit. Let's go back to if we picked a blue in bag 1. Well, we could have picked a red in bag 2. So there are 3 reds and 7 blues. Now let's go all the way back to the start. And let's pretend we picked a red from bag 1. Let's have a think. What's the probability? Well, there's 4 red and 7 in total. And a blue from bag 2. Well, that would stay the same, wouldn't it? Because there's still 4 blues and there's still 7 altogether. And there's 3 reds and 7 altogether. And that would be enough to get you full marks. Let's move on to the second question. It says work out the probability that 2 counters picked are of different colours. So let's follow the paths down. If I pick this one, so a blue and then a blue, I've ended up with a blue and a blue. Well, they're not different colours. So let's try another line. So if I pick a blue and then a red, well, that's a blue and then a red. So we want that one. Let's start going down here. So I pick a red from bag 1 and then a blue from bag 2. Well, that's the one we want. And let's try the last one. So a red from bag 1 and a red from bag 2. Well, they're not different colours. So it's these middle 2 we're interested in. It's that one and that one. Now the way of working out the probability of ending on either of those is just to write down the fractions that you passed to get there. So I passed this one, so 3 over 7, and I passed this one, so another 3 over 7. And then what you do is you times them. Now to times fractions, you just times the tops times the bottoms. So 3 times 3 is 9, 7 times 7 is 49. Let's do the same with the red and then blue. So we passed a 4 over 7, and we passed another 4 over 7. And let's times them. So that's going to be 16 over 49. Now, this is the problem, is we end up with 2 fractions. Well, we need one answer. So we need to find some way of combining those together. And in probability, we use the word or. It can either be that one or that one. And any time you use the word or, what you're going to do with the fractions is just add them together. Now, the beauty of this is normally you're going to end up with lovely denominators that are the same. And when the denominators are the same, all you need to do is add the numerators. So 9 plus 16 is 25, and the bottom stays the same. So it's 25 over 49. So to answer this question, we need to be really familiar with the formula y equals mx plus c. Now y and x will constantly change, but m is what we call the gradient, and c, or plus c, is what we call the y-intercept. Okay, so we need to understand how to use that formula for this question. Now it already tells us that the gradient of the line is 3, so we can fill that in. So it's y equals 3x plus c. Nice and easy. The only thing we don't have is the y-intercept. Now the way of getting the y-intercept is substituting in the values we know. We know when x is 3, y is 17. So what I'm going to do is just put in the values. Put in the values of 3 for x and 17 for y. So it's going to be 17 equals 3 times 3 plus c. And I'm going to put my lines in so that I can solve it. So that's 17 equals 9 plus c. And we're going to take away 9 from both sides. So it's going to be 8 equals c, or just c equals 8. So looking back at this formula we had earlier, we had m but we didn't have c. Well, we now have c, which is 8. So it's y equals 3x plus 8. And you can check that by putting in the values of 3 as x and see whether you get 17. 3 times 3 is 9. 9 plus 8 is 17. I hope you enjoyed that video. Don't forget you can go to our website onmaths.com, which the link will come up there now, and to do the paper online, or to check out our other stuff. We've got topic busters for all of the topics that can come up. Don't forget that this is only a practice paper. We call it a prediction because what we've done is we've cut out the stuff that we feel has come up in paper 1 and 2, and so leaving a few topics that we select which ones the exam board generally goes for in paper 3 on the calculator or paper. So it's only a bit of practice. Please don't rely fully on this paper at all, and just make sure you do normal revision as well as this video. If you've liked this video, please click like. If you really like it and want to see more from us, especially in the next few days, please click subscribe. Thank you very much.